You stand in front of a mirror, your reflection gazing back at you. You've spent years perfecting the image, your appearance, your performance, your every word and action. Everything is meticulously crafted to appear flawless. You've worked tirelessly to meet the expectations of others, to meet your own high standards, and to ensure that everything is just right. But as you look closer, a strange feeling creeps in, something unsettling, something that you can't quite put into words. Despite the polished exterior, there's a quiet voice in the back of your mind that whispers, "Is this enough? You've done everything to perfection, yet it feels like you're still falling short, like the version of yourself that's been presented to the world is just a facade." You can't shake the nagging sense that you're not really living, you're just performing, just striving for something that seems always just out of reach. This is the price of perfectionism, the relentless pursuit of an ideal that, no matter how hard you work, can never truly be attained. It's the feeling of constant inadequacy that creeps in when you know that your every action is measured against an impossible standard. You've succeeded in creating an outward appearance of success, of happiness, of stability, yet inside, you feel as if something is missing. The more you achieve, the more perfect your life seems, the emptier you feel. Why does the pursuit of perfection feel so hollow? Why does striving for the best sometimes leave us feeling worse? You have to wonder, does striving for perfection actually bring fulfillment, or does it drain your sense of self and joy? The very act of pursuing perfection creates a paradox. You work endlessly to build a life that aligns with some ideal image, yet with every step you take toward this ideal, you feel more disconnected from your true self. What does it mean to truly succeed in life if the very pursuit of success leaves you exhausted, anxious, and uncertain? The more you try to perfect everything, the way you look, the way you perform, the way others perceive you, the less room you leave for your authentic self to emerge. It's as if you are a puppet, constantly pulled by the strings of an unrelenting, external standard, never able to rest, always chasing something that feels just beyond your grasp. The perfect life, the perfect career, the perfect relationship, these promises seem so close, yet they always feel like they're slipping through your fingers. And so, the question persists, is it worth it? The chase for perfection, does it really bring the happiness and fulfillment you think it will? Or does it come at a price too high to pay? This question sits heavy on your mind because it forces you to confront something deeply uncomfortable. Is the cost of perfectionism your very soul? To understand why perfectionism consumes so many of us, we must delve into the complex layers of psychology, philosophy, and society that sustain this elusive and damaging pursuit. Perfectionism isn't simply a personal flaw or a passing phase. It's deeply rooted in the very fabric of human existence, shaped by our need for approval, our internalized beliefs, and the societal forces that surround us. Its roots stretch far beyond individual struggles and are connected to larger existential questions about identity, worth, and the meaning of life itself. At its core, perfectionism is driven by the human desire for control. We live in a world that often feels chaotic, unpredictable, and out of our hands. The idea of being perfect offers a semblance of control, an illusion that if we perfect every aspect of ourselves and our lives, we can protect ourselves from judgment, failure, or vulnerability. Perfectionism becomes a shield, a way of ensuring that we are seen in the best possible light, and that we avoid the discomfort of imperfection and vulnerability. Carl Jung, one of the most influential figures in psychology, offers critical insight into this. He spoke about the persona, the social mask we wear to interact with the world. For Jung, the persona was necessary for survival. It allowed us to function in society by presenting an image that aligned with social expectations. However, Jung also warned that over-identification with the persona can lead to a loss of the true self. The perfectionist persona, then, is an extreme version of this mask, where the individual becomes consumed with presenting a flawless image to the world. But in doing so, they lose touch with their authentic self, creating a deep inner conflict. In Jungian terms, this conflict manifests as the shadow, the unconscious part of the psyche that holds our repressed traits, desires, and emotions. The more we strive for perfection, the more we suppress the parts of ourselves that do not align with this ideal. We bury our flaws, our imperfections, and our vulnerabilities, believing that they are unworthy of attention. But as Jung would argue, the shadow always finds a way to make itself known, often through anxiety, self-doubt, and a constant sense of emptiness. Perfectionism, in this sense, is an ongoing battle between the idealized self we present to the world and the authentic self that we try so hard to suppress. Perfectionism also speaks to existential questions about meaning and worth, questions that have troubled philosophers for centuries. Friedrich Nietzsche offered a provocative view of the pursuit of perfection, arguing that it stems from slave morality, a system of values that prioritizes conformity and mediocrity over personal greatness and authenticity. Nietzsche believed that conventional morality encourages individuals to settle for a life defined by external approval, leading them to seek perfection in ways that deny their true creative potential. For Nietzsche, the drive for perfection is not an expression of strength but a manifestation of weakness, a desperate attempt to conform to societal expectations and avoid confronting the chaos and unpredictability of existence. In his concept of the Übermensch, Nietzsche suggested that true greatness lies in the ability to embrace imperfection and create one's own values, values that are not dictated by societal standards or the pursuit of external validation. The perfectionist, in contrast, is trapped by external ideals, unable to break free from the need to conform and to measure themselves against an unattainable standard. Nietzsche's philosophy reveals the deeper existential cost of perfectionism. It limits personal growth, creativity, and the ability to experience life fully. It keeps us locked in a cycle of striving for something that, in the end, brings us further away from our authentic selves. The pursuit of perfection also connects to our need for belonging and approval. As social creatures, we are biologically wired to seek acceptance from others. Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs suggests that after our physiological and safety needs are met, our next priority is social belonging and esteem. Perfectionism arises when we equate our self-worth with external validation. If we are perfect, we believe, others will accept us, love us, and respect us. Yet, this desire for approval comes with a catch. Perfection is unattainable, and the pursuit of it creates a constant cycle of anxiety and insecurity. We're never truly good enough because the standard we've set for ourselves is impossible to reach. This drive for external validation can be traced back to societal forces that shape how we view success and worth. Aldous Huxley, in his dystopian novel Brave New World, explored a society that places extreme pressure on individuals to conform to a rigid set of ideals. In the novel, people are conditioned to fit specific roles, and perfection is defined by how well they adhere to these roles. While Huxley's vision is fictional, it mirrors the real-world pressures we face. Society often imposes its own set of rules for what constitutes a perfect life, a perfect body, a perfect career. Social media only amplifies this issue, with curated images of success, beauty, and achievement constantly presenting an idealized version of life that most of us will never live up to. These external pressures fuel the perfectionist's belief that they must continually measure up to an impossible standard, or else risk rejection and failure. Jean-Paul Sartre, the French existentialist philosopher, provides another layer of understanding when he discusses the concept of bad faith, the act of lying to oneself in order to avoid the anxiety of freedom and responsibility. Sartre argued that people often hide behind false identities or roles because they are afraid to confront the raw truth of their existence. Perfectionism, in this sense, is a form of bad faith. It is a self-deception, where we hide behind the mask of perfection to avoid the discomfort of being fully authentic. The perfectionist often convinces themselves that they can control their lives and their identities by adhering to a set of rigid rules, but in doing so, they deny the freedom and authenticity that comes from embracing the messy, imperfect nature of existence. Ultimately, the psychological and philosophical roots of perfectionism reveal a profound truth. Perfectionism is not simply a desire to improve oneself. It is a way of escaping the deep existential anxiety that comes with confronting the truth of who we are. It is a coping mechanism for avoiding the uncertainty, imperfection, and vulnerability that define the human experience. We cling to perfectionism because it offers an illusion of control, a sense that if we can perfect everything, our work, our appearance, our relationships, then we can finally feel whole and validated. But in reality, the pursuit of perfection only deepens the disconnection between our true selves and the masks we create to survive in the world. The consequences of perfectionism often go unnoticed, subtle but far-reaching. On the surface, perfectionism may seem like a harmless drive to improve oneself or to achieve high standards. However, beneath this well-intentioned pursuit lies a host of hidden costs: mental mental, emotional, and relational, that subtly shape our lives. As we dig deeper into the unseen consequences of perfectionism, it becomes clear that the cost of living with these unattainable standards is far greater than we often realize. One of the most immediate and damaging effects of perfectionism is its toll on mental health. Anxiety, stress, and depression are common companions of the perfectionist. The relentless pressure to meet impossibly high standards creates an internal conflict that is exhausting. The perfectionist constantly battles feelings of inadequacy, knowing that no matter how hard they try, they are never truly good enough. This cycle of striving for perfection and falling short fuels a deep sense of failure, even when outwardly everything appears to be perfect. Research in psychology supports this idea, showing that perfectionism is closely linked to mental health disorders. Studies have shown that perfectionists are more prone to anxiety disorders, particularly because of their constant self-imposed pressure to achieve and perform perfectly. The fear of failure becomes overwhelming. Every task, every decision, and every outcome is seen through the lens of potential judgment and rejection. This produces a constant state of stress, where the perfectionist feels as though they are walking on a tightrope, always fearing they might fall. In the long term, this constant state of anxiety can lead to burnout. Perfectionists push themselves beyond their limits, often sacrificing their well-being in the process. The drive to achieve often overrides the need for rest, self-care, and personal reflection. The perfectionist, always working, always striving, slowly burns out, only to repeat the cycle once more, becoming trapped in a vicious loop of exhaustion and self-criticism. This relentless pursuit of the ideal leads to an emotional collapse because the perfectionist has no space for imperfection, no room to breathe, to fail, or to simply be. In Viktor Frankl's exploration of existentialism and meaning in man's search for meaning, he argued that the quest for meaning, not happiness, is what truly drives human beings. Perfectionism takes this concept and distorts it. Instead of seeking meaning, it pressures individuals to seek perfection as an escape from discomfort and uncertainty. The result is not fulfillment, but a perpetual sense of emptiness. Frankl suggested that the true path to fulfillment is through self-transcendence, which requires us to let go of rigid standards and embrace imperfection, vulnerability, and the ability to learn from failure. Perfectionism also casts a shadow over relationships. Those who demand perfection from themselves often extend this expectation to others. In romantic relationships, friendships, and even professional settings, perfectionists may impose unrealistic standards on those around them, often unknowingly. This creates tension, as others feel they cannot live up to these expectations, leading to feelings of resentment, inadequacy, and frustration. The perfectionist's intense focus on achievement and self-improvement can make them emotionally unavailable. They may become so absorbed in their quest for success that they neglect their relationships. Conversations may center around achievements and progress, leaving little room for emotional connection or vulnerability. The perfectionist, fearing judgment or criticism, may struggle to open up, often hiding their true feelings behind a mask of control and composure. This emotional distance can cause relationships to feel shallow and disconnected, as the perfectionist remains trapped in their own need for validation and approval. In friendships and family dynamics, perfectionism can also manifest as a desire to fix others or impose a set of standards on their behavior. The perfectionist may unintentionally undermine the autonomy of those around them, constantly offering advice or criticism with the belief that they are helping. However, this can lead to tension, as others begin to feel judged or controlled, rather than supported. The more the perfectionist tries to shape the world to meet their ideal, the more they alienate themselves from others who don't fit into that narrow mold. Perhaps the most insidious consequence of perfectionism is its impact on authenticity. To be truly authentic is to embrace both strengths and flaws, to exist in the world without the need for constant validation. Yet perfectionism forces us to create a false self, a persona designed to meet external expectations and avoid criticism. This creates a psychological conflict between the real self and the ideal self, leading to a sense of alienation and disconnection from who we truly are. When we continuously strive for perfection, we risk losing touch with the parts of ourselves that make us human. Flaws, vulnerability, and imperfections are not weaknesses. They are essential parts of our identity. Yet, perfectionism tells us that these qualities are something to be ashamed of, something to hide away. The perfectionist becomes a performer, constantly playing a role, presenting an image that is socially acceptable but not necessarily authentic. This loss of authenticity breeds a deep sense of dissatisfaction and emptiness. Jean-Paul Sartre spoke of this phenomenon in his concept of bad faith, the act of lying to oneself to avoid facing the painful truth of our existence. Perfectionism, in this light, is a form of bad faith. The perfectionist lies to themselves, believing that they must be flawless in order to be accepted, loved, or valued. The reality is that we are all flawed, and those flaws are the very things that make us human. Embracing our imperfections is the key to authenticity and self-acceptance. But when we are caught in the perfectionist trap, we cannot embrace these imperfections. Instead, we live in constant fear of being exposed for not measuring up. The perfect self we project becomes a prison, locking us in a life of inauthenticity and emotional numbness. The more we perform for others, the less we understand who we are at our core. On a societal level, perfectionism reinforces a narrow and often unrealistic view of success and worth. In a culture that celebrates achievement, productivity, and outward success, we are constantly told that we must be at the top of our game in everything: our careers, our relationships, our physical appearance. This societal pressure creates an environment where imperfection is not tolerated and vulnerability is seen as a weakness. The consequences of this perfectionist culture are widespread, contributing to a society of comparison where people measure their self-worth against others. Social media platforms have exacerbated this, providing a constant stream of curated, idealized images that foster comparison and self-doubt. We are bombarded with images of flawless bodies, perfect vacations, and successful careers, leading us to believe that everyone else is living the ideal life while we are failing. In this environment, it's easy to see why so many people turn to perfectionism. If society tells us that happiness and worth are found in success, achievement, and beauty, then the logical conclusion is that perfectionism becomes the means to attain those things. The societal drive for perfection leads to widespread anxiety, burnout, and mental health issues. People begin to believe that they are only valuable if they achieve the perfect life, creating a deep collective sense of insecurity and inadequacy. As we move toward the final realization, it becomes clear that the price of perfectionism is steep, both individually and collectively. It strips us of our authenticity, isolates us from others, and pushes us further away from the true fulfillment that we all crave. But there is hope. Understanding the cost of perfectionism is the first step in breaking free. Breaking free from the chains of perfectionism requires a radical shift in perspective, one that challenges everything you thought you knew about success, self-worth, and happiness. This rebellion against the myth of perfection is not a denial of ambition or self-improvement. It is, instead, an embrace of imperfection, vulnerability, and the acceptance that life is inherently messy. In this new way of thinking, happiness is not found in the flawless pursuit of an ideal. It is found in living authentically and accepting the unpredictable nature of our existence. The first step in breaking free from perfectionism is to redefine your relationship with imperfection. Instead of seeing imperfection as something to be avoided or fixed, begin to view it as a source of liberation. Perfectionism is a prison. It keeps you locked in a cage of impossible standards and constant self-judgment. Imperfection, on the other hand, is freedom. It allows you to be human, to make mistakes, and to learn and grow from those mistakes. Friedrich Nietzsche famously said, "Become who you are." What if, instead of constantly striving to meet someone else's standards, you embraced who you truly are in all your flawed glory? What if you stopped trying to be perfect and allowed yourself to make mistakes, to be messy, to be vulnerable? True growth comes from embracing imperfections, not by hiding from them. Perfection is a facade that hides your true self. Imperfection is what makes you real. This shift requires you to challenge the deeply ingrained belief that success or happiness is dependent on being perfect. What if success could be measured by the courage to show up authentically, not by how flawless your performance appears to others? To break free, you must be willing to embrace this new standard, a standard that celebrates authenticity, vulnerability, and self-acceptance. One of the most liberating practices in the battle against perfectionism is learning to accept the concept of good enough. Perfectionism thrives on the belief that anything less than perfection is failure, but in reality, perfection is a moving target. Good enough doesn't mean mediocrity. It means acknowledging your efforts and accepting the outcome without endless self-criticism or unnecessary striving. It's about letting go of the need to control every detail and allowing things to unfold naturally. Viktor Frankl, in his exploration of human resilience, said that we find meaning not in our external achievements, but in our response to life's challenges. He proposed that the ultimate freedom is the ability to choose how we respond to the circumstances around us. The perfectionist's mindset denies this freedom by constantly measuring everything against an unattainable standard. Breaking free means choosing to respond to life's challenges with acceptance and self-compassion, instead of constant self-recrimination. Good enough becomes a mantra, not as a form of resignation, but as an act of radical self-compassion. By embracing this mindset, you give yourself permission to be human, to accept that not everything needs to be perfect to be meaningful, and that you don't need to overachieve to prove your worth. A major part of perfectionism is the constant need for external validation, the desire for others to affirm that we are good enough, that we are worthy of love, respect, and success. Perfectionism teaches us that our worth is based on what we achieve, how we look, and how others perceive us. But this external dependence for validation is an endless cycle. External validation will never fill the void because it is conditional. It only exists as long as we meet someone else's expectations. The rebellion against perfectionism involves learning to validate yourself. This means recognizing that your worth is inherent and does not depend on external approval. Carl Jung emphasized the importance of individuation, the process of becoming your true self. This journey requires you to stop seeking validation from the outside world and to begin looking inward for affirmation. To be truly free, you must accept that your value is intrinsic, not dependent on your accomplishments or the opinions of others. Breaking free from perfectionism also requires a deep practice of self-compassion. This is not the same as self-indulgence or self-pity. It is about treating yourself with kindness and understanding, especially when you fall short of your own expectations. Self-compassion means recognizing that everyone makes mistakes, that everyone is imperfect, and that you are deserving of kindness and care, regardless of your perceived flaws or failures. Instead of criticizing yourself for every mistake or imperfection, practice self-kindness. When you don't meet the standards you set for yourself, instead of falling into a spiral of self-criticism, treat yourself as you would a dear friend who is struggling. Offer yourself comfort, understanding, and encouragement, rather than judgment. This simple shift in mindset can break the cycle of perfectionism, replacing harsh self-criticism with a more compassionate and balanced approach to growth. Additionally, self-acceptance involves recognizing that you are enough as you are, not because of what you achieve, but simply because you exist. This can be an incredibly challenging shift, especially in a world that constantly tells us we must be more, do more, and achieve more to be worthy. But true peace comes from embracing yourself, flaws and all, and accepting that you are worthy of love and respect, not because of your accomplishments, but because of your inherent worth. One of the most liberating aspects of breaking free from perfectionism is learning to embrace the journey rather than focusing on the destination. Perfectionists are often fixated on achieving a specific outcome, but this focus on the destination robs them of the joy and growth that comes from the process. Life, like any meaningful endeavor, is about the experiences along the way, the lessons learned, the connections made, and the challenges faced. Jean-Paul Sartre, the existentialist philosopher, argued that life is a continuous process of becoming, not a static destination. We are not defined by our achievements or our failures, but by our ability to engage fully with the present moment and to continue growing. When you stop viewing life as a race toward a perfect outcome, you open yourself to the richness of the journey itself. Every moment is an opportunity for growth, for learning, for understanding, and for self-discovery. By embracing the process, you free yourself from the relentless pursuit of perfection and begin to experience life in a more fulfilling, authentic way. In the rebellion against perfectionism, you reclaim the power of your authentic self. You no longer need to perform for others or measure your worth against an impossible standard. Instead, you begin to live from a place of true empowerment, choosing to engage with the world in a way that reflects who you truly are, not the persona you've created to please others. This is the power of embracing imperfection. It allows you to step into your true power and to experience the world as it is, without the need for constant control or self-judgment. Breaking free from perfectionism means choosing to live authentically, to embrace the beauty of imperfection, and to find peace in the uncertainty of life. You no longer need to be flawless to be happy. You simply need to be yourself, accepting your imperfections, knowing that your worth is not contingent on external validation or success. This radical shift in perspective allows you to experience life as a fluid, evolving process, one that is rich with meaning, growth, and joy. And now, you've arrived at the deepest revelation, the truth that will forever shift how you see the world, yourself, and the pursuit of perfection. Are you ready for it? Here it is. Perfectionism is not the path to fulfillment. It is the greatest barrier to true happiness and authenticity. It seems so simple, yet this realization is profound, one that rewrites everything you've been taught about success, happiness, and self-worth. The truth is that the pursuit of perfection, far from making us better or more successful, locks us into an endless cycle of dissatisfaction, preventing us from ever fully experiencing life as it is meant to be experienced. Why? Because perfectionism is the ultimate illusion. It tells us that we must be flawless in order to be worthy of love, success, or happiness. It whispers that there is something wrong with us if we aren't perfect, that we must measure up to an impossible standard in order to feel whole. But the ultimate truth is this: Perfection doesn't exist, at least not in the way we've been conditioned to believe. What we call perfection is often just a mask we wear to hide our vulnerability, our flaws, and our humanity. The price of perfectionism is our very soul. It is the belief that we must be something we are not in order to be worthy. It is the constant denial of our imperfections, which are the very things that make us unique, beautiful, and human. The pursuit of perfection robs us of the ability to accept ourselves as we are, to live authentically, free from the crushing weight of unrealistic expectations. This realization doesn't just change how we view perfectionism, it changes the very way we see life. Once you realize that perfectionism is an illusion, the pressure to measure up, to strive for an unattainable ideal, begins to fade. The very foundation of your inner struggle starts to crumble. The moment you let go of perfection, you open yourself to something far more profound: authenticity. Authenticity is not about achieving a set of external ideals. It is about embracing your true self, imperfections, flaws, mistakes, and all. When you accept that you do not need to be perfect, you give yourself the freedom to just be. You stop chasing after something that will never bring you lasting fulfillment and start experiencing life as it is, in its beautiful messiness. Imagine, for a moment, that you no longer had to strive to be someone else. What if you stopped measuring your worth by external achievements, approval from others, or the image you project? What if, instead, you gave yourself permission to simply live authentically, embracing the ebb and flow of life with open arms, as it is, right now? The beauty of this realization is that once you stop chasing perfection, you free yourself from the burden of self-judgment. You no longer have to perform for the world or keep up with an endless series of external standards. You can finally relax into the moment, free from the internal pressure that has been driving you for so long. What follows from this realization is nothing short of transformation. When you free yourself from the need to be perfect, you open the door to genuine growth. Growth does not come from striving for an ideal. It comes from embracing your current self, from working with what you have, and from learning through trial and error. The perfectionist's mindset leads to stagnation because it creates a rigid framework that limits your ability to explore and evolve. True growth is fluid. It is messy, and it is always in motion. Only when you stop trying to control the outcome can you experience the joy of personal transformation. This is a radical shift in how we understand success and happiness. We've been taught that happiness is a destination, something to be attained once we meet a specific set of conditions, be it career success, personal appearance, or relationships. But the truth is, happiness is not a destination, it is a state of being. And this state of being is not dependent on perfection. Happiness arises from the acceptance of life as it is, not from the pursuit of an idealized version of it. Now, think back to the moments in your life when you were truly at peace. Were they moments when everything was perfect by society's standards? Or were they moments when you allowed yourself to simply be? When you embraced the imperfection, the uncertainty, the messy reality of life? It's likely that the moments you cherish most are those where you let go of the need for control, the need for validation, and simply allowed yourself to exist in the present, free from judgment. This is the essence of true fulfillment, living without the constant pressure to be perfect, without the expectation that you must live up to some impossible standard. It is the realization that you are enough as you are, right here, right now, with all your flaws, your struggles, and your uniqueness. So what happens when you accept this truth? What changes? You become free. Free from the anxiety of never being good enough. Free from the stress of constantly measuring yourself against others. Free from the burden of perfectionism that has held you captive for so long. You reclaim your authenticity, your true essence, and you begin to experience life in a way that is more vibrant, more meaningful, and more real. What if this very moment could be enough? What if the perfect life you've been chasing isn't the one you need to find, but the one you are already living? This realization is the key to unlocking a new way of being, a way of living that is grounded in acceptance, self-compassion, and the courage to embrace imperfection. You don't need to be perfect. You never did. The ultimate truth is that you are worthy, not because you are flawless, but because you are human. And in that humanity, in that vulnerability, lies the greatest power. Now you stand at a crossroads. Will you continue to chase an unattainable perfection, or will you step into the freedom of authenticity? The choice is yours. And the truth is this: true happiness will never be found in perfection. It will be found in the courageous act of living imperfectly, embracing all that you are, and accepting life as it unfolds. So, the question becomes, what will you do with this newfound freedom? The world is waiting for the true, authentic you to emerge. Will you let go of the need to be perfect, and finally allow yourself to live fully, to love fully, to experience life in its fullest, most imperfect glory? The power is in your hands.